This land we call home has a rich and varied history stretching back thousands of years. But hidden below the surface are some amazing treasures just waiting to be found.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
That's really cool. So each year across the country, archaeologists dig underground and dive underwater, searching for fresh discoveries.
The most amazing thing in British archaeology.
Uncovering traces of ancient lives.
Somebody's pride and joy, I'm sure.
And finding fascinating objects.
Such exquisite detail.
This year, I'll be meeting the archaeologists and looking at some of their most incredible finds.
I mean, that is stunning.
While Dr. Tori Herridge is travelling the length of the country to some spectacular locations.
Where I'll be dropping in on some of this year's most fascinating digs.
Oh my gosh, can you see that?
It's just brilliant.
Oh my goodness.
Every dig provides a new piece in the puzzle of Britain's forgotten past. This is the epic and unfolding story of our islands. Welcome to Digging for Britain. In this episode of Digging for Britain, in Slimbridge, Tori discovers an opulent Roman bathhouse.
I'm sitting in a marble bath. I've just walked across a heated mosaic floor.
A place of luxury and power, its rich finds revealing a world of privilege on the edge of empire.
It does not look like it's 2,000 odd years old.
In Cambridgeshire, archaeologists make an unexpected discovery.
A large pit full of human remains.
And I get a closer look at one extraordinary skeleton.
I wonder who he was.
And in Wales, we journey back over 300 million years
This stuff was already fossilised by the time dinosaurs were walking around.
to uncover a lost prehistoric world that helped spark the Industrial Revolution.
It's never, ever, ever going to get old.
Across the country, waterways form natural boundaries, as well as providing an important means of transport. The Severn Estuary has one of the highest tidal ranges in the world, and this extreme variation has shaped the landscape here for millennia. Our first dig takes us to the floodplain of the River Severn, to Slimbridge, 15 miles south of Gloucester. Today, the wetlands around Slimbridge feel somewhat remote and isolated. But excavations here over the last 6 years are shaping our understanding of what this landscape looked like and how it was used 2,000 years ago in the Roman period. A team from Archaeoscan are investigating a site which seems to have been used from the Iron Age into the Roman period, and it covers a vast area. Tori Herridge has gone to meet archaeologist Tony Roberts to find out what he's discovered and why he thinks it's so important.
Tony, this is an excellent spot to survey the land. It's flat country all around, but some hills in the distance. And then the reason why we're here, this incredibly expansive site.
Absolutely. What we're looking at here is a quarter of the large Roman compound. It measures, we think, 80 metres by 40 metres, and we think there are buildings around that as well. So it's a really large landscape that's emerging.
So it's a landscape story. I mean, I see this and go, that's actually just a pretty impressive Roman site. But it's the landscape that is key here.
Absolutely. We believe that what we're uncovering here is a prehistoric landscape that's focused on the River Severn, trading on the Severn, perhaps living off the Severn. And then sometime in that first century, just after the Romans have arrived, they then occupied that same landscape. For what reason? We can speculate as we go on.
2,000 years ago, the Severn came further inland to the edge of the site, giving direct access to one of Britain's great waterways, a route south to the sea and north into the heart of Britain. This would have been a prime location for establishing new Roman routes into Britain. Tony and his team may only be excavating a small portion of the site, but they have already uncovered an impressively grand bathhouse, hinting at the wealth and status of those who lived here.
In the underfloor area, around the hot pool, we would have had the stoke room where the hot air would have been generated by the open fire. That hot air would have been pumped through to this area here. All this would have been the heated space, and the mosaics would have sat on the floor this height.
So you would have walked across this lovely mosaic floor into an absolutely
bath
glorious
here.
warm bath. Can I step down into it?
This is probably the foundations of one of the steps into the bath.
So step down like a Roman would have done.
So you can come down and actually sit down and luxuriate in this lovely warm water. As we look around, we would have seen wall paintings or mosaics around us. This would have been a very luxurious place. And we probably would have been sat in a marble bath as well.
Imagine like 2,000 years ago. I'm sitting in a marble bath. I've just walked across a heated mosaic floor.
Absolutely.
Did you say columns?
Yeah, there would have been some columns down this side. We think that some of the bases over here would have held some columns very fancifully decorated. And the early period of Roman occupation in Britain, this kind of opulence was an unusual thing.
The grandeur of the bathhouse implies that the people who inhabited this landscape almost 2,000 years ago were rich, powerful, and elite. And the finds are providing a fascinating window into their world. I don't want to startle you, Jake, but I've heard you found something.
Yeah, so we're clearing down this gravel layer, and we think we found a twisted wire bracelet.
So you're sort of just digging away at the edges?
Yeah, just sort of flitting each bit of dirt away and seeing what crumbles away.
There you go.
That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh, look.
Look at that.
That's
It's only a small little bit.
lovely. Look at that. Exquisite little piece of 2,000 years old jewellery dropped in a Roman bathhouse on the side of the Severn. Each item offers new clues about who occupied this incredible site. Overseeing the finds, Lee James is going to show me some of the most remarkable discoveries from the bathhouse. Lee, I'm being so drawn to this bling over here.
This is just a small fraction of the artefacts recovered from this area.
This is just so sweet.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous little bird, right?
Yeah, it's a bird, probably a bird of prey, maybe like a falcon. You can see the swept-back wings.
Yes.
It looks like the feet were sort of onto a hinge.
Oh, I see.
So maybe a lift-up lid.
Oh, yes. So beautifully crafted. I can see the little beak and the eye.
Yeah.
Look at that leaf.
Possibly from a statue.
Oh, right. That sort of laurel crown or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's correct, yeah.
So again, you sort of pictures this bathhouse. So the people are coming in richly decorated with some serious Roman bling, and you've got these very ornate vessels, statues.
We're talking social elite here, and we've got some really standout items. This one here is a writing stylus.
Oh, look. It does not look like it's 2,000 odd years old. It's just brilliant.
Bronze, but it's quality. Obviously, writing onto a wax tablet. Pointy end is the writing, and then the flat end is your eraser to rub the wax back out again.
It's got a really fine point at the end of it, hasn't it?
But a real standout find in the collection so far is this beautiful Greek scalpel.
Oh, look.
It's completely bronze, so the cutting edge is still bronze. It's not steel and it's not iron, which does make it very unusual.
The bathhouse finds are just one piece of the puzzle. Coins are helping to narrow down the timeline of the site.
This one is a Domitian coin, and we can actually date that one exactly to 86 AD. A Trajan denarius, silver, 103. Everyone's heard of this one as Hadrian. He's around from 117 AD. And a beautiful silver denarii of Empress Faustina. That's around 171.
OK, so you've got everything from like 80 AD to 171
Yeah,
AD, so 100 odd years or so of time here.
Exactly right.
You get quite a few grand Roman villas in the UK. They're still special, all of them, but is there anything unique about this place?
This is an early site. We're not up in the Cotswolds, and we've got some grand sort of 4th century villa going on.
Yeah, do you think these people were Romans that came in?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that your feeling?
With this sort of high level status material, they're coming into the site for sure.
While the Cotswolds are famous for their numerous remains of opulent Roman villas, most reached their heyday in the 4th century. The finds here point to something unusual for the area, evidence of high status activity at least a century earlier. This early compound hints at a new foothold of power and influence right on the edge of Rome's world.
Archaeology helps reveal how the landscape of Britain has changed over time, as well as revealing details of everyday life and patterns of peace and conflict.
Warfare has changed a lot over the centuries as people find new and interesting ways of committing acts of violence. We can track that looking at the evolution of weaponry, but something that's been far less studied is the animals that were involved. Professor Naomi Sykes has been looking at a new study investigating the evolution of the warhorse.
As a zooarchaeologist, I'm fascinated by this new research. It sheds light on a pivotal moment in Britain's history, the year 1066. At the Battle of Hastings, the Anglo-Saxon world was conquered by a new kind of army. The Normans brought with them a revolutionary way of fighting. Stitched into the fabric of our history, the Bayeux Tapestry shows Norman warhorses charging into battle. But what made them so effective in the battle itself? I've come to the University of Exeter to examine the evidence with the project lead, Professor Oliver Crichton. Ollie, you know everything about medieval horses. What were they used for?
Well, horses are used for a great variety of different purposes in Anglo-Saxon England. They're used for transport, they're used for pulling carts, they're used to an extent in agriculture. But in the Norman period, famously, horses are used increasingly as a weapon of war. Anglo-Saxon warriors may have used horses to ride to battle, but they didn't habitually fight on horseback, which is a key feature of Norman warfare.
And is depicted in the Bayeux Tapestry.
Absolutely. This iconic depiction of the Bayeux Tapestry, 1066, the most famous days in English history. We see Normans fighting on horseback, and we see the Anglo-Saxons fighting dismounted.
So this must have been incredibly overwhelming for the Anglo-Saxon army.
Yes, it's in many ways symbolised by the image down here of a defeated Anglo-Saxon warrior beneath the hooves of a marauding Norman warhorse.
It is just like the perfect symbol of what the warhorses bring to this battle. Being on horseback clearly gave the Norman army a huge advantage. But what made horses such effective weapons of war? Bioarchaeologist Dr. Kali Amin has been analysing thousands of bones to find out. Carly, we've got some horse bones here. Where are they from?
Well, this is a modern horse from our reference collection. But these bones here are from an archaeological site that spans the conquest period. And so just by taking measurements of this bone, we can actually estimate how tall the horse stood. And we found from our study of thousands of horse bones that actually, on average, the medieval horse was much smaller than horses we would expect to see today. In fact, most of them are between 12 to 13 hands high, which is about just below your shoulder.
Yeah. So we're not really talking so much about war horses, but more kind of like war ponies?
Absolutely. And if you think about using a horse in battle, you need to be able to get on your horse, and not just at the start of the battle where somebody is maybe around to help you, but in the heat of the battle. If you were to fall off, you would certainly want to be able to get back on. And so having a horse that sort of smaller size wouldn't necessarily have been a disadvantage.
So what made those war horses then particularly special if size isn't everything?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really interested in is how the horse moved. So we've been focusing on the joint of the rear leg, which is called the hock joint.
The horse's hock, though higher up the leg, works much like a human ankle. A powerful hinge that drives each stride forward and absorbs the shock of every landing.
We were thinking about how can we understand the way that this joint might respond to horses that are doing different types of activities, and if there's enough pressure of a horse that might be used in a battlefield in terms of its repetitive activity that differs from a horse pulling a plow, where the bone will start to remodel, and then we can capture that shape change and understand about what these horses were doing when they were alive.
Using a technique called geometric morphometrics, Carly captures hundreds of photos of a particular bone in the hock joint to build precise 3D replicas, revealing its exact shape in extraordinary detail. By comparing the shape and size of each sample, she can analyze subtle differences that show how Norman war horses were built for battle.
Here is the final product. Each one of these little dots is one of our horses in our data set. And then along these two axes, we're getting the two most important types of shape change, where one of them is thinning or thickening, and the other one is lengthening or shortening. And so the Norman horses appear up here near these red dots because they weren't that much shorter or longer, but they were much fatter. Whereas our Saxon horses plot with a skinnier and possibly slightly longer shape to them.
So what does that shape difference mean in terms of the characteristics of the horses and how they were moving?
So horses with this wider but shorter ankle bone shape are much more adapted for short, fast, powerful movement. So maybe something like you would see on a Norman battlefield, where a horse needs to be able to go fast but also slow down to change a lot of directions.
Okay, so what we're seeing then is that the Norman horses, they're shorter, they're fatter, which is giving those horses more maneuverability and more power.
Yeah, dynamic motion that the horses needed to do to be effective on a battlefield that the Saxon horses before that just didn't need.
Geometric morphometrics has proved that small, agile horses played a critical role in shaping the course of history. They helped the Normans conquer England. Without those powerful ponies, 1066 might not have been such a significant date.
Archaeology provides us with a different way of viewing the past, adding to what we already know from written history. But sometimes archaeologists turn up completely unexpected evidence, opening up new questions, a mystery to be solved.
Half a century ago, human remains were found just outside an Iron Age hill fort in Cambridgeshire. suggesting those individuals had come to a violent end. Now, archaeologists have returned to the scene, armed with the old notebooks and with geophysical survey. And when they started digging, they made a gruesome discovery.
Our next dig takes us to Wandlebury in the Gog Magog Hills, 3 miles south of Cambridge. A mystery emerged here in 1976 when a storm tore through the landscape, uprooted a tree, and revealed bones buried beneath. At the time, it was thought they were connected to the Iron Age hill fort nearby. But new dating by a team from Cambridge University tells a different story. The bones don't date to the Iron Age after all. Instead, they're the remains of people who died 1,000 years later, in the early medieval period. The archaeologists were keen to investigate further. As they return to the site, even more human remains are emerging from the ground. Now, archaeologist Oscar Aldred and bone specialist Trish Byers are trying to understand why these burials are here.
You're starting to see the top of a skull emerge here, a hand fairly articulated coming out, and then you've got the elbow here that has some serious trauma to it, probably a pretty strong blow, probably exposed out to the skin as a fracture. And then we've got another skull or cranium emerging, and another skull. We should be able to get a sense of how many people were here once we have everyone in the lab.
We thought we had quite a simple story. 2 bodies, possibly a third in a ditch. And now we seem to have a much more complicated story. We've got a large pit full of human remains. This is unexpected.
At this point, it looks likely that these bodies were all buried at the same time. So, who were these people? And why were they left here?
What we've got now is another individual.
This is your femur, which is the top, and then you've got your tibia and your fibula down here, which are the lower leg bones. What's interesting here is this evidence of a growth plate indicates that this was a young adult.
So in terms of sex, do you reckon about that?
Off the cuff, you can kind of note that the brow ridge is actually quite thick and robust, which would be classically male trait.
Is there any speculation on the treatment of the individual?
There's no care going into this. It's get rid of the decomposing corpse. I would say this was done pretty quickly, and then another person on top, and another person on top, and another person on top.
These were young men who seemed to have met a violent end, their bodies thrown into a pit. Trish looks for further clues in their skeletons.
They are incredibly dense for long bones, which means that these people were doing quite a lot of activity, quite a lot of load bearing. If they were young males, 17 to 24, that would probably make sense if they were doing a lot of fighting.
As the team continue to dig, more remains emerge from the ground. It's a rare opportunity for students to help unravel this mystery.
I've been working mainly with the trowel and with my paintbrush, and I've managed to uncover 3 skulls over here. The individuals we're studying are a very similar age, if not the exact same age as me, and it really brings back a lot of humanity to what we're studying, thinking about how they may have lived, how they may have died.
The team meticulously record every detail.
Obviously, we're dealing with a very traumatic event, and we need to be very controlled about how we excavate and lift. It's quite a hard process now. We've done the easy part, and now it's the hard work.
The team will now carefully lift the bones and send them to the lab where further analysis will help to shed light on evidence of disease and injury in these skeletons, and perhaps even help us to understand how they died. Oscar and osteologist Benjamin Neal have brought along one of the most intriguing skeletons to the tent.
So this is just one of these individuals then, Oscar and Ben, from this quite extraordinary site. And this is a beautifully preserved skeleton of, well, my first impression is a very tall person.
He is a very tall person. He's about 6'5".
Really?
But what's really remarkable about this chap is the hole in his head. That is not a weapon injury. That is a classic case of trepanning.
It's a deliberately made hole in the head. It's not an act of violence.
No, it's not.
He hasn't been assaulted. He's been subjected to what is basically surgery.
Yes.
Is there any way that we can get any closer to understanding why somebody might have done this?
This hole in the head is probably connected to why this individual is so tall.
Okay, because he is unusually tall.
Stand out tall
Yeah,
for the period. One of the primary thoughts is that this individual had a tumour at the base of their brain.
So you've got the pituitary gland
Yes.
in there, which produces a lot of hormones, including growth hormones.
So when they're developing, when they're young, because the ends of the bones haven't fused properly, the shafts just keep on growing. But obviously, they are starting to fuse now.
So there's a potential then that this is an individual who had an excess of growth hormone.
Yeah.
And that might be related to a pituitary tumour. And the pituitary tumour then caused increased pressure inside the skull, and that he experienced that as headaches. And this is what this is trying to relieve.
To relieve, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's treating the symptom
Yeah.
rather than removing the tumour.
Obviously, we start looking at the pathology in his skeleton now. And one question that we might ask is, has this trepanning caused his death? It hasn't, has it? Because actually this has healed over.
Yeah.
So this was done quite some time before death.
Yeah.
When does he date to?
So 8th, 9th century CE.
Okay.
So we're talking Anglo-Saxon.
Are we starting to have any Vikings attacking England
late-
at that point?
Yeah, it's towards the late 9th century. In the area where we are, there's potentially a Viking camp in historical records.
So then we probably have to look at the wider cemetery, don't we, Oscar,
Yeah,
to try and
yeah.
understand a bit more about
Yeah.
who he was and why he was there.
Yeah. We've lifted this individual that we've got laid out on the table.
Oh, my goodness, that's our tall man.
Yeah. Yes.
So we can see the back of his skull there, so
Yeah.
he's face down.
Yeah.
And then we've got bones of somebody else in
Yeah.
here as well.
There's up to 10 individuals within the pit based on the number of skulls. So we're talking piles of heads, piles of legs, all stacked together. Quite macabre.
Yeah.
You can see here this individual is laid out flat, but you can see the head is a little bit wonky. And then when you get closer into the skull, you can see there's a really well-defined chop mark just on the lower jaw here.
So this individual has been
Yeah,
decapitated.
this individual's been decapitated.
But then you've got this jumble of bones above it.
I think what's weird and what we need to kind of think harder about is the way that the body parts were collected and then deposited.
It'll be really interesting as that analysis proceeds to see if there's any other evidence of violence, any old
Yeah.
healed weapon injuries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you immediately start to think, are you looking at soldiers
Yeah,
who are prisoners of war
Yeah.
and they've been executed?
yeah.
So coming back to our man here, we know he survived a trepanation. We've got an idea about why he might have had a trepanation to begin with. And then we're wondering if he is local or if he might have come across the North Sea.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're going to find out, I hope. Will you come back and
Yes,
tell me?
Absolutely.
I wonder who he was.
Next, we're staying in central Britain and heading to the hamlet of Woolsthorpe by Colsterworth, 35 miles south of Lincoln. It was here where a young Isaac Newton first began to question the world around him. But this dig isn't about Newton's discoveries, it's about his beginnings and his mother, Hannah, the woman whose choices shaped one of history's greatest minds. It's a story that takes us back to the early modern period. Isaac Newton's father was a sheep farmer, but he died before Isaac was born. When Isaac was 3, his mother remarried and moved a mile away, leaving him to be raised by his grandparents at Woolsthorpe. A decade later, widowed again, Hannah returned to manage the Newton estate. She repaired the manor and built a new house beside it for herself and her younger children. That house has long since vanished. But now a team from York Archaeology and the National Trust is digging to uncover its footprint and traces of the private world that shaped a genius. Archaeologist Laura Parker leads the dig.
This, in theory, is the internal area of the house. We have a couple of stones here that seem to be standing quite proud and seem to be quite faced. It's possible that these could be remains of one of the walls. Moving over slightly further, some kind of cobbled surface, maybe some kind of path. You can actually see the edging of it here. External to the house, if the wall is around here, we'll just need to do a little bit more work on it just to see what we can find.
Hannah's house was part of a working farmstead, and when Isaac was 17, it was time for him to run the estate. But it proved disastrous, as House and Collections Officer Jenny Johns explains.
Isaac's destiny was to be head of the Newton family, to marry, have children, and be able to continue the Newton name here as a sheep farm at Woolsthorpe Manor. But it turns out he left the sheep unattended. He forgot his horse when he went to Grantham and left it behind on his way home. Hannah realised that this wasn't going to be his destiny. He was far too busy making models of windmills and making water clocks and really trying to discover more about the world around him. And Hannah didn't stop him. Because of Hannah, Isaac was given the access to the education that was the foundation that led to him changing the world.
Hannah was central to Isaac's life, and as the footprint of her house emerges, the finds offer glimpses into their daily world.
Just here, we've got a lovely little button, definitely at least 18th century. You can tell by the fitting on the back. We've had a range of pottery. This is Staffordshire slipware, dating from around 1690s through to 1750s, so this could easily have been from a bowl or a plate or something that would have been in Hannah's house. They've got 2 different kinds of slip on the pot. When you glaze over the top and fire it, it comes out with these really lovely yellows and browns. And then going into domestic objects, we've got this lovely buckle here that still just hinges, possibly a shoe buckle rather than a belt buckle, so it gives you an idea of the fashions of the time. A very small thimble, likely to be a child's thimble. Back in Hannah's time, girls would have been practicing embroidery. Hannah's children may have been using something similar to this, maybe even this particular one.
The finds and foundations give us an impression of daily life here. But to uncover more about Hannah's character, Professor Yasmin Khan is searching the Lincolnshire archives.
These documents are the will of Hannah Smith and an inventory of all her goods when she died on the 6th day of June, 1679. At the top of this inventory, we can see that it lists all the goods and chattels of Hannah Smith, all the different rooms in the house, a cellar, a kitchen, a coal house, and a yard. We also get a sense of the things that are inside the house. Silver spoons, cupboards, a bed with bedding. But this isn't just a house, it's also a working farmstead. Agricultural implements, 6 horses, 200 sheep, so really quite prosperous. I think what's important to remember is this is Hannah's stuff. These are her things that she has accumulated and earned. But there's something here unexpected, which is items due unto her, bills, bonds, and other debts. And there's this really large number here, £1,400. Now, in today's money, that's about £250,000. What this shows is that she's been money lending. This is a shrewd lady who understands numbers, understands money, is literate. And although she's not an aristocrat, she's clearly making the most of her situation and profiting from this farmstead. The inventory gives us a sense of the material goods and what was in the house. But the will really gives us insight into who Hannah was as a person. I give unto my daughter, Hannah Smith, all my household goods, provided that she not be married before the time of my decease. Unlike aristocrats at the time, always giving everything to the eldest son, Hannah is ensuring that her unmarried daughter is safe and secure for the future. When we turn onto the second page, there's something else. I give unto my son Isaac Newton the fields of Buckminster in the county of Lincoln, which I purchased off Thomas Fountain. Go down a little bit further and it says, more fields of Buckminster, which I purchased off Henry Hill. Hannah's going out of her way to show us in the first person she's bought this land. And we know how she's done it because she's owed all this money. She's money lending. So Hannah is very savvy. She's accumulating wealth. She's using the money that she's earning to buy land, and she's able to leave this to her heirs.
The more I explore these documents, the clearer it becomes that Hannah was an extraordinary 17th century entrepreneur. Twice widowed, she ran a thriving farmstead, built wealth, and supported her family. Her son became one of history's greatest scientists, but the apple clearly didn't fall far from the tree. Hannah's savvy intelligence and determination laid the foundation for it all.
Archaeology reveals all sorts of different types of evidence, from the architecture that people made to the artifacts they created, and sometimes, of course, the remains of the people themselves in the form of human bones. But we do find other bones on archaeological sites that give us an insight into the relationship of humans with the wider natural world, the animals that they interacted with, that they ate, that they rode, and that they kept as pets.
Our next dig takes us to the foot of the Wittenham Clumps, 10 miles south of Oxford. Archaeologists have been excavating here since 2018, and they've recently discovered a Roman farmhouse built on top of an Iron Age settlement. Layer by layer, the site is revealing how the lives of humans and animals have been woven together for centuries. Archaeologist Nat Jackson is leading the dig.
We've got nearly 10,000 fragments of animal bone from the excavation so far. This is one of the remarkable things about the site. We can see how that relationship is evolving through the Iron Age and into the Roman period.
At least 15 Iron Age roundhouses have been uncovered so far, as well as traces of the livestock that these farmers tended.
In front of me, we've got a cow jaw, and then underneath, we've got another bit of horn core. And then just to show you the sheer variety of all the animals that we have discovered on the site in the Iron Age, we've got more cow, we've got sheep, pig. There was also some tiny bones from smaller creatures. We're also finding a huge amount of dogs on this site.
Dogs were the first animals to be domesticated by humans tens of thousands of years ago. They often turn up on Iron Age sites. Looking at animal remains can help us build a bigger picture of people's lives in the past.
What we've got here is an intact dog skeleton. So meaningful to find something like this because we all know dogs, we really care about them, and you can really see that the family who buried this 2,000 years ago also really cared about this dog. It's laid out in such a beautiful way, and now we're the first ones looking at it again, and it's going to teach us so much about the people who were living here 2,000 years ago.
As the Iron Age gave way to the Roman period in Britain, society and landscapes changed. But dogs remained a familiar presence, leaving behind tiny clues to their place in people's lives, as find specialist Karina Garland reveals.
I wanted to show you this absolutely fantastic ceramic building material. It's Roman, and in this little corner here you can just see a little paw print. When the Romans were making tiles, they would have made them and then they would have left them out to dry. Chances are a cheeky little dog ran across this tile and left its mark. We have had lots of examples of animals on site. I don't think I've ever worked on a site that has this many dogs.
Maya Pina Dacia has come to the tent, bringing some of the remains of these Iron Age and Roman dogs. And she has some interesting theories about some of these bones.
Maya, this is a bit of a surprise.
But it does tell quite a story. So this is an Iron Age dog that we found on our dig. And at the time we excavated, we were, we kind of got really interested in why was it buried here? Was this some kind of ritual? Was it a sacrifice? Did no one want it anymore? Or was it a much-loved working animal that was laid to rest with care and affection?
So what work have you done on it then? What are you able to tell about it?
The first thing we can see is that all of the joint surfaces have fused on, so we know it's an adult, it's a mature dog. And when we actually look at the teeth and see some of the wear pattern on it, so you can't be too precise, but it does sort of match up with a dog that's around maybe 10 plus years old.
Okay, so a very mature dog.
Quite a mature dog, yeah.
And there's no calculus.
Healthy dog. Yeah, good diet.
Because, one of the problems that we have with our pet dogs today is that if they're eating a diet with a lot of cereals in, they do tend to get plaque and calculus building up on their teeth. I'll have to brush my dog's teeth.
So we know, from the shape of the skull and the size of the skeleton and the legs, sort of roughly what size it was. Something around the size of a modern Labrador. But things start to get really interesting when we take a closer look at some of the bones.
Well, my eye is immediately drawn by that.
Yeah, you've gone exactly to the right place.
So that's the tibia, and that looks like it's sustained a fracture, which is healed.
Quite a nasty one as well, really serious break. But what you can see is that it's healed. So we know this animal has been cared for, it's been looked after, and it's lived for quite a long time after what looks like quite a serious injury. But that's not the end of its story. We've also got its stomach contents.
Okay.
So we've got the feet bones of a sheep in here.
Okay.
And what we can see when we look really closely at it is that some of them, you can even see the outer bone loss, which suggests maybe it's been in the stomach. And that
it was found in the
started
stomach area, was it?
Yeah. And also a little toad bone, so maybe it's also been scavenging and
really?
catching some of its own food as well to supplement the diet. But it certainly suggests that someone's been feeding it, or it's been collecting butchered animal waste. And at the back of the throat, we found 2 more.
Oh, really? And you're sure that these are not just part of the fill of the pit? that they were very, very
They
closely
were-
associated
yeah,
with
they were
the
very,
the
very
neck bones.
closely inside when we lifted the skull out. They
Yeah,
were
so
basically in
potentially
that-
the cause of death.
Potentially.
Choking on the feet of the sheep that it's been eating, yeah.
It's had quite a life. It's lived a long time. It's had some sort of injury. It's been cared for and buried with respect. So this is just one aspect of how humans interacted or related to dogs. In the Iron Age, they had medium-sized dogs. They were usually working animals. That doesn't mean to say they didn't care about them, that they weren't part of life in the settlement.
And what about these bones?
So these come from a later period. So the same site, we've got the Iron Age settlement, but right on top of it, we've got the remains of a Roman villa or farmstead. What happens in the Roman period is something really quite interesting. We have, again, probably medium-sized dog, working animal, but then we've got these two much, much smaller dogs. And we don't find small dogs in the Iron Age period, really, at all. They are something that comes in with the Romans. And from our estimations, this one would have stood about 20 centimetres tall, and is currently, as far as we know, the fifth smallest Roman dog found in Britain.
So you're talking about
It's the size,
Chihuahua size?
exactly, the size of a Chihuahua. They started bringing them over because on the continent, they started to breed them as pets. We think of having small dogs as something that's a modern phenomenon, but actually it's something that started in Britain with the Romans.
It is interesting because so often we are so focused on the humans, and actually the animals are really, really important. They're part of the context, they're part of the ecology of the humans.
I think it's quite an interesting story, seeing the evolution of how our relationship with dogs and animals has changed over time.
Just a lonely radio, just a makeshift show and tell, laying out the lives of the lost and found.
The centre of Britain is richly layered in history. Some of the most imposing landmarks date from recent centuries, from the time of the Industrial Revolution. But the impetus for that transformative period has much more ancient roots. For our next dig, Tori is off to Brumbo in North Wales, to what was once a booming metalworks during the Industrial Revolution.
Standing amongst these industrial relics, I can almost hear the roar of the furnaces and feel the energy of this place. These furnaces produce thousands of tons of iron and steel each year. They were the powerhouses of the Industrial Revolution. But the story of how this industry was born goes much deeper. To a world 300 million years old. I'm meeting paleontologist Tim Astrop to discover the ancient origins of coal, the fuel that powered it all. Tim, I've just walked through the most amazing industrial site. Yes, it's in a derelict condition, but you just get a sense of the sheer scale of the activity that was going on here.
Yep. The story here is pretty amazing. This is the only place in the world where you can see the fossils that produced the coal, that fired the industry, that built the community within such a small area.
What are you doing here? What's going on?
We're excavating a in-situ fossilised forest. It's about 300 million years old, 40 million years before dinosaurs. So this stuff was already fossilised by the time dinosaurs were walking around.
Carboniferous was a remarkable period in Earth's history when, under just the right conditions, ancient plants were compressed and transformed into coal. But not all the plants here became coal. Some were fossilised, probably as a result of an ancient flood. Now, these fossils offer a rare glimpse of what this extraordinary landscape once looked like. Look at this!
Yeah.
This is awesome. You
It
don't
is.
need to be an expert
No.
to realise that this is a massive fossil tree.
It really stands out. This is a giant lycopod, one of the most easily recognisable trees of the Carboniferous period. Big broccoli-type top leaves coming off of the bark. It was a very, very strange, alien-looking tree.
Is there anything like this on Earth today?
There is. They survive today as diminutive little club mosses. But during the Carboniferous, they were one of the first groups of plants to have a go at being a really big tree.
How tall would it have been?
Some of the estimates for these guys get to about 100, 120 foot.
What? Like, that is, like, way, 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 way up there. And when you talk about it being a fossil forest, it actually was a forest, but a forest like none that we would be familiar with today.
No, it would be very strange.
And what about these nodules? What's that?
This whole area is completely jam-packed full of something called siderite concretions, which are ironstone balls that 50, 60% of the time contain a nice, beautiful fossil
I was
inside.
going to say, is there something inside them?
There is, yeah.
These hard ironstone concretions formed when iron-rich water cemented ancient swamp mud around plant or animal remains. Hundreds have been found on site. By cracking them open, we can see what the plants inside once looked like.
Hey!
Tom Hughes is on hand to show me how it's done.
OK, so what's the technique?
We want to smash them down that orientation because the plant, if there's one in there, will be lying flat along that plane.
OK, so tap, 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 and then whack.
Yeah, so you tap, then whack, see how the rock reacts as you go.
Tap, then whack. It is harder than it looks.
That was a good split.
Oh, my goodness. OK. Oh, look!
Nice.
It looks like a little tiny, tiny leaf. Is that a leaf?
That is a long single leaf. So that's called a Cyparites, and it's the leaves from the giant club moss trees. Branches will be covered in millions of these little leaves. And you can see the vein running through the centre of it.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
The sheer number of fossils paints a vivid picture of a lost landscape. But among them, one plant stands out, remarkably similar to the fern-like horsetails we see today. These ancient plants once thrived in swampy forests, their tall, jointed stems rising above the prehistoric undergrowth.
The horsetails are probably the most common plant that we have here. All across this surface, we've mapped 83 so far.
There's just so many, like 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5.
These guys were probably 15, 20 metres tall, and these probably represent a single thicket that was living all at the same time.
That's a proper thicket.
Some of the horsetails have been carefully removed, so the rock encasing them can be separated from the fossilised plant beneath.
They're taking off the sediment, all the rock bits that were attached to it underneath, and then we're exposing the plant itself. The
You
plant
can really see it. And it's broken into pieces.
Yeah.
Is that just the way the layers in the preserving mud have broken it, or is this a feature of the actual plant
Good
itself?
question. So these are actually part of the plant. These are the nodal sections, right?
Yeah, you've got some actual modern day
Here's our inspiration. This is growing on the site just a few metres away.
I see that's those same stripes.
That's it. So you've got some ribbing up and down the stem, and then at each section, these are the nodes. And at each node, you have the leaves or the branches coming out.
So that's what you had here.
Basically
Just-
exactly the same.
Just a lot bigger.
Way bigger.
The large fossils build a picture of what this strange forest would have looked like, while it's the smaller fossils that reveal the most intricate details.
We also have some really beautiful seed ferns. Some of them were trees, some of them were just scrambling ferns. This one is what we call a lianescent plant. This was actually climbing trees. So it was using some of the large standing lycopods and horsetails to wind its way up, unfurl at the top of the canopy and almost parasitise the top of the canopy with giant fronds.
It's absolutely beautiful.
What this site can tell us is how those organisms interact with each other. This one's really cool. This is only found in Brumbo. It's a true fern, and it's a species called Aileria fosteri. It's named after Andrew Foster, who discovered the site.
Oh my gosh.
It's cute, isn't it?
It's really cute. It's
I love
beautiful.
finding these things.
How many of these do you have? Are they rare?
We've probably found around 10,000 since we started. And this building, we think, only covers a fifth of the productive area that we could be excavating.
Each fossil is a glimpse into this ancient world. But not all the forests were preserved like the one we've seen. Some were compressed and transformed into coal, the fuel that powered Britain's Industrial Revolution.
When you said coal seam, I wasn't quite expecting it to be like this visible at the surface.
Yeah, the coal seam that you see here is the result of these forests living and dying over thousands and thousands of years. Everything in here is being cooked out, and it's just the carbon that remains from the plants. And this is just one of 12 to 13 seams in this coal field, and there's coal fields all over the planet. And when you think about it, that's millions of years worth of carbon sequestration being pumped back into the atmosphere in 200-300 years.
Yeah.
Blink of an eye, really.
Here at Brumbo, the connection between its ancient forest and the industrial world it fueled is tangible. 300 million-year-old plants transformed into the energy that built a nation.
You were completely in your element, Tori, with this one. You had fossils.
It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It's so unusual to see like a site like that open and active. Entire Industrial Revolution was built upon 300 million year old preservation of tropical forests.
Yeah.
Right? And you see it so clearly at Brumbo. Right? They've got the coal deposits there as well as the fossil forest itself. And when you look at it and you realise that that is just one tiny portion of millions and millions and millions of years of rainforest growth compressed.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that was burnt in an instant.
And it's all that sunlight energy that was trapped 300 million years ago, released again at that moment that the coal is burnt.
Getting that context, you know, and understanding that, I think it is really, it's really powerful. It's really tangible, something which you could only get in places where you put the whole story together. Not just the history, not just the archaeology, but the entire deep time setting for why things happen where and when they do.
And in terms of engagement and learning and education, I think we're seeing at that site, which is very much about paleontology, the same thing as we see with archaeology. It's the power of the physical. You're not just reading it in a book, you're not looking at it on a screen, you're actually confronted with that physical reality.
It's really, really, really special.
Next time on Digging for Britain, an ancient fort surprises the archaeologists.
What seems obvious often isn't, and there's truth is lying in the soil.
2 huge Roman swords are discovered by chance.
What's the chances of me on my second time detecting to find such a wonderful item?
And a search for the fabled Tin Isles
Oh my gosh! That is a Bronze Age fingerprint.
reveals the crucial role Cornwall played in the Bronze Age.
It's destroyed the thing completely.